Hello everyone and welcome in today's webinar. My name is Gzim and I am the account manager for security portfolio at PECB, also the organizer of this webinar. As you are already informed, we organize weekly webinar in regular basis covering different topics and areas. In this webinar, we will hear about the cybersecurity guidelines, introduction to ISO 27032. This session will be hosted by PECB trainer and partner, Mr. Fabrice de Paepe, who is managing director at Nitroxis Sprl and has more than 15 years of experience in IT and information security. I hope this webinar will help you understand the major points of this topic and the importance of the standard. And if you have any questions, you can write them in question box in the right-hand control panel, or you can use the option to raise your hand and we will answer to all of them accordingly. Please, Fabrice, you may continue now.
Okay, thank you, Gizim. I'm Fabrice de Paepe. So, as introduced by Gizim, I'm senior information security consultant. My practices are principally consulting missions in information security and governance, and organizing as well as providing trainings for PECB since almost 2 years right now. Today, we will speak about ISO 27032, which is a standard for guidelines for cybersecurity, and this standard has been released in 2012. Just moving window. Okay, so let's start with cybersecurity. I will try to explain what's in it and maybe to leave you with a reflection after this webinar. So as you can see, the #1 worldwide security threat is cybersecurity. It will yet increase in 2016 and in the forthcoming years. There are a lot of emerging technology and threats on SCADA systems increasing as well. So I would say winter is coming, and we really need to get prepared as organizations and also individuals. Okay, so 4 years ago, the director of ABI told hacking will replace terrorism, and it coincided also with the release of these standards. And I often used to say to my customers, there are two types of companies, meaning those who take backups and those who never had problems. Finally, he explained the same, but at least each company or each organization will be hacked. So that's the reason why we really need to get prepared for that. So the schedule for today, there is 4 parts in this webinar. First of all, an overview of cybersecurity. What do we mean by cybersecurity? Then we will see the different relationships with the other kind of security. Then the third part will be for guidance for addressing common cybersecurity issues. By guidance, I mean guidance for the different stakeholders within the cyberspace. And finally, I will try to prove you that all the stakeholders need to collaborate on resolving cybersecurity issues. Okay, so let's start by a definition. I can read the definition with you, but I will rather explain my own representation of that definition. Well, we use cyberspace every day to exchange emails. We use the cloud to handle our bills and invoice. We speak with our partners through Skype, Viber, or any other mobile app. We can also use a VPN to connect to our corporate network from abroad, and we read it with our own tablets from everywhere in the world. We follow distance learning trainings such as MOOCs or e-learning or webinar. What we are doing here is also a kind of usage of cyberspace. So Christmas is also coming, so I'm sure most of you will also pick up some gift on Amazon or into the cloud. So this is really what is cyberspace. It's described it as a virtual environment, which finally does not exist as a physical form, but rather a complex environment or space resulting from the emergencies of the internet. And then within that, you put a lot of people, organization, activities, all sorts of technology devices and networks that are connected to it. This is called cyberspace from the ISO 27032 point of view. So we just discussed about cyberspace. Now, what is cybersecurity? Well, cybersecurity is the cyberspace security, or cybersecurity is about the security of this virtual world. And I would always use cybersecurity instead. I don't like to speak about cyberspace security. This is really too long. So cybersecurity relates to action that stakeholders should be taking to establish and maintain security in the cyberspace. So you see already with this definition, as stakeholders in the cyberspace, we need to take action to maintain and to establish security in this cyberspace. So the standard finally is not a certifying for the organization, such as ISO 27001. This can be seen as a guidelines. You can integrate these guidelines or this standard within your ISMS, and ISMS stands for Information Security Management System. For ISO 27001, the latest version dates from 2013, and you can integrate it as a huge control for your ISMS. So for the overview of cybersecurity, this standard provides guidance for improving the state of cybersecurity with a focus on attack by malicious and potentially unwanted software, social engineering attacks, because we as humans are always the weakest link finally. And it also provides a framework for information sharing and coordination between all the stakeholders. In case of a security incident, we need to share with maybe another organization. So we deal about business to business, I mean B2B, and we need to align our both organization to coordinate in case of a security incident happen. So these are the three topics that the standard is focused on. Well, an interesting pictures because this describes finally the relationship between all the components of the cybersecurity. By components, I mean stakeholders, controls, vulnerabilities, risk, threats, agents, threats, and assets. For instance, security is concerned with the protection of assets from threats, where threats are categorized as the potential for abuse of protected assets. All categories of threats should be considered, but in the domain of security, greater attention is given to those threats that are related to malicious or other human activities. Safeguarding assets of interest is the responsibility of stakeholders who place value on those assets. So you see again the stakeholders as an important place within cybersecurity. You can also have threat agents, and these threat agents may also put value on your assets and seek to abuse them. I mean, they have value, how can I say it? You put value to asset, but your asset have also value for maybe for competitor, for hacker, for activist, I don't know. And therefore the value you give to your asset can also be a problem, because you will raise the attention of potential threat agents. So you have also the risk, and the risk rely on basically on CIA. I mean confidentiality, integrity, availability of the information. And on the other hand, stakeholders assess risk taking into account threats that apply to their assets. This analysis can help in a selection of control to control the risk and reduce it to an acceptable level. And again, the acceptable level shall be finally defined by the stakeholders. This is they are accountable and they can delegate responsibility to provide countermeasure for that. So control are imposed to reduce the vulnerabilities or impact to an acceptable level for the stakeholders. And stakeholders can also ask assessments of the control to external organizations. By assessment, I mean pen testing. Pen testing require an audit, having code reviewer, doing some kind of social engineering and engineering test. And it's also recognized as being involved in establishing and maintaining cybersecurity by the stakeholders, finally. Okay, if we look at both standards, between what are the main differences between ISO 27001 and ISO 27032? Well, in ISO 27001, we have a risk analysis. I'm not saying we don't have it in ISO 27042, but we need to follow the rules defined by the risk analysis of the ISMS. While the ISO 27001 is an auditable standard, the ISO 27042 is not. And the ISO 27001 is more extensive and global, while this standard is more concrete and specific to cybersecurity. So the difference also is 27001 is known right now for more than 10 years, while the cybersecurity standard is it was released in 2012. So it focuses rather on stakeholders' role and responsibilities, policies, procedures towards cybersecurity. That's it for the key concern. So the other pictures I wanted you to present is the difference between cybersecurity, application security, network, internet. These figures finally summarize the relationship between cybersecurity and other security domains. The relationship between these security domains and cybersecurity is really complex. Cybersecurity is different of information security and of network security and internet security. For example, some of the critical infrastructure services, for example, water distribution and transportation, need not to impact the state of cybersecurity directly or significantly. However, the lack of cybersecurity can have negative impact on the availability of critical information and critical information infrastructure systems provided by the critical infrastructure providers. So you see the relationship is not really obvious. On the other hand, the availability and reliability of the cyberspace in many ways rely on the availability and reliability of related critical infrastructures and services. For example, telecoms, telecommunication company, ISP, internet service providers. The security of the cyberspace is also closely related to the security of internet. Internet could be at your enterprise, at your organization. It could be also at your home, at your private home. And you use either VPN or network from your organization or your home network and information security in general. Each security domain identified in this picture may have its own scope. You can have a scope on application security which is completely different from the cyber security. You can have different objectives, you can have different focus, and that's why also this is particular and you need, as cybersec professional, you need to understand the procedures of your of your organization, the policies, the new evolving of technology. You need to understand the relationship between the organization as well, because cybersecurity, as you see, is really bounded to different domains. And a basic framework for information sharing and issues and incident coordination is also necessary to bridge the gaps and provide adequate insurance to the stakeholders in the cyberspace. Well, I hope you clearly see that cybersecurity finally is a subset of information security and the different possible relationship between them. This slide is talking about assets. We will introduce the concept of an asset and what kind of asset do we speak about in cybersecurity. An asset is finally anything that has value to an individual or organization. There are many types of assets. For this standard, we kept only 6. I mean, information. Information is an asset. What we are talking about during this webinar could be seen as an asset. Obviously, this is a public webinar, so this is not confidential, but just to give you the intuition. We could have software, we could have physical. Well, they replace physical, and physical is a merge of hardware, and with hardware you have computer, server, it's all what you can touch. You could have services within your organization, and depending on the services, some services will deal daily with the cybersecurity. You can also have people, as I said earlier, these are the weakest link of the daisy chain. And something that organization often forgets, this is the reputation and the image or the branding of an organization. What would happen if a hacking company is also itself hacked? Well, I think they will have a huge problem with their reputation and image, and maybe this is also related to business continuity because they will lose the trust of the customers. So these are all the assets of which we are talking about, and these standards define the assets. 2 types of assets. They define the personal and organizational. And for both classes, an asset can also be further classified as either a physical asset or either a virtual asset. Physical is whose form exists in the real world, not in the cyberspace, I mean. And on the virtual assets, which only exist in the cyberspace and cannot be seen or touched in the real world. As an example, I can give you for personal physical, I have my own smartphone. This is my own physical asset. I use bitcoins to purchase things on the dark web. Bitcoins, it's my asset, but this is virtual because you cannot touch it. As organization and physical, of course, we have the infrastructures. Virtual, this is my brand. Because I cannot touch my brand. So this is how the assets are categorized in the standards. If we go a little deeper, we have to speak about threats. And threats poses to assets. So threats also poses to personal and organizational assets. Threats to personal assets revolve mainly around identity issues posed by leakage or theft of personal information. For example, I have my credit information on the internet, and this information can be sold on the black market, which can facilitate online identity theft. As rules and regulations for the protection of real physical assets in connection with the cyberspace are still being written, those pertaining to virtual assets are almost non-existent. and extra care and caution must be undertaken by participants. By participant, again, we speak about stakeholders. So as you followers of this webinar are also, I can say also you are stakeholders of the cyberspace somewhere. And in the event of a successful attack, personal information from employees, clients, partners, or suppliers could be disclosed and result in sanctions against the organizations. So you can have a role surfing at your home, not on a VPN, but doing things that could be bad for your company. So you need also to be aware of that. Another part I wanted you to explain is the financial filing regulation. It could also be breached if an organizational results are disclosed in an unauthorized manner. Well, a recent event around the world reminds us that terrorism is still a threat and is present. The government agency also need to protect their data. If they want to fight against these organizations, they need to keep it secret and they need to be secure as well. Cyberspace is a gray area in which terrorism thrives, and thanks to the ease of communication provided by the cyberspace. So everyone could be, if this is good performed, everyone could be anonymous on the web. By anonymous, I'm not speaking about the real anonymous, the activists, but it's really difficult to regulate and control the way that it can be used. I mean, the cyberspace, you know, borders, scope, boundaries, you are playing on different countries with different regulation. It's really complex. Well, these standards also introduces or presents five types of attacks mechanism. First of all, this is social engineering attacks. Then we have hacking. Then we have malicious software, malware. Then we have spyware and unwanted software. This standard highlights five types of attacks. Attacks come from inside the private network or outside the private network, meaning from internet. From the inside, normally it could be launched inside an organization private network, typically the local area network, and can be initiated by employees or someone who gets access to a computer or network within an organization or individual premises. From the outside network, you can have denial of service attacks called DOS. You can have XML bomb. You can have buffer overflow, IP spoofing. There is a lot of attacks from outside the network. Many of the attacks are carried out using malicious software such as spyware, worms, and viruses. Information is often gathered through phishing techniques as well. So these attacks can be propagated via suspicious websites, unverified downloads, spam emails, remote exploitation, and infected removable media. Other mechanisms growing in use are those based on social networking. You have also the clickjacking. I mean by clickjacking, you click on a video on Facebook and nothing happens. Well, indeed, there is no video. Rather, a remote script or a Trojan is installed in stealth mode on your computer, but you don't know it. And individual tends to implicitly trust messages and content received from contact previously accepted in their profile on their social networking website. And then it's it. Once an attacker can disguise him or herself as a legitimate contact, the attacker can engage others, and a new avenue is open for launching the various type of attacks. So I'm pretty sure if I send you an email as the CEO of a major company from the inside of the company, and you work for this company, I'm sure you will click on the link I provided you in the email. And this is called also phishing attacks, social engineering attack. So you see, again, you can also be a stakeholder of the cyberspace, and you need to maintain the cybersecurity. On the other end, you can also surf on legitimate website, but this website can also be hacked and have some of its file corrupted and used as a means for perpetrating attacks. Individual tends to implicitly trust commonly visited websites, often bookmarked in their internet browsers. You can also have an HTTPS website with a SSL certificate being corrupted. So be aware of these kind of things. Once the risks are identified and appropriate guidelines are drafted, cybersecurity controls that support the security requirement can be selected and implemented. And who will select and implement this? It's again the stakeholders of the organization, the people who have the power to decide, because they are accountable to select the right controls. So you see, it's based on a risk analysis process. And even if we don't speak about risk analysis in this standard, you need to rely on any other risk analysis process. If you use ISO 31000 or ISO 27005 for information security, or if you use your own risk analysis within your ISMS, you will also put the cybersecurity controls to handle and to treat the risk finally. So this is an overview of the key cybersecurity control that can be implemented to support the guidelines laid out in this standard. So at first sight, we have application level controls. It means you will implement control to protect against unauthorized data edit, carry out transaction logging, or error handling. Secure coding must be also implemented to secure information collected by products in the cyberspace. You can also have a look at ISO 27034, which stands for application security. This is another standard. On the second part, you have also the server protection. By server protection, I mean the control must be implemented to ensure servers are securely accessible from the cyberspace and protected against unauthorized access and malicious content. I mean, you need to harden your server. By hardening, it's like disabling useless services, because you can therefore close the door and avoid a lot of problems. This is just an example. Well, you also have end-user controls, and by end-user controls, these controls must be implemented to protect the end-user infrastructures across organizations. And you also need to protect the infrastructures against known exploits and attacks. So I'm just speaking about known exploits. It means you need to have a kind of organization within your organization that follow these threats, that follow these exploits, that follow these vulnerabilities, and that the management should be committed to that. Otherwise, if you are not get prepared, you won't know that the risk exists, and maybe you can be hacked, or someone is an intruder is on your network for 2 years and you don't know that. So end user control are also really important. Finally, we have control against social engineering attacks. Well, finally you should train and educate users on the use of suitable technical controls to protect against known and exploit and attacks. As a general guide, technical controls defined in this section should be implemented. So if you have an information security policy within your organization, you also need to align this awareness session for cybersecurity with the information security policy. Well, we will dive a little bit more within the application level controls. What do we intend by application level control? Well, display short notice of the company's essential online services, so users are able to make more informed choices about sharing their information online. Have a look at local charters. e-commerce compliance charter, ethical charter in your different countries. For instance, in Belgium, we have also this kind of charter for e-commerce. So people surfing on this recognized website know that the website being audited and that they are committed with the charter will follow a certain number of rules, and these rules are also disclosed on the public website. So this is what I explained for display short notice on the company. Then on the second hand, secure application level. That's interesting because secure handling of sessions for web applications, you need to have cookies, you need to handle the different cookie laws in different countries, or depending on the European regulation, you have maybe to set some cookie flag. You need real expert for that. And finally, we can also speak about OWASP, which is the a project which takes into account the top 10 vulnerabilities on the web application. And on this top 10, if you take only the top 2, you have SQL injection and cross-site scripting. By having a SQL injection, believe me, if you have that in your website, I can drop your database. I can retrieve all your password of your database if this is not encrypted. I can change the price of your e-commerce website, whatever. And by a cross-site scripting, also meaning XSS, I can send you links to your blog. And all the people that will follow these links will be finally infected, depending on their browser. So this is also your reputation as a company to follow these things. If you want to know further about OWASP, I leave you just Google these terms: OWASP, CWE, SANS, and of course we have the ISO 27034, which is really important for developing secure application. Then we also need some kind of security review and testing by appropriate skilled entities, meaning people knowing what they are doing about code review. Finally, we also use HTTPS and SSL. SSLs, the organization should be provided in a fashion that the consumer can authenticate the service. So he can really identify you as organization and not someone on behalf of the organization. Then for the server protection, meaning we need to protect the server against unauthorized access of malicious content on servers. As told earlier, you need to have some hardening on it in accordance to a baseline security or configuration guide within your company. You also need to implement a system to test and deploy security updates and ensure the server on the operating system and application are kept up to date promptly when new security updates are available. But the standard does not explain you how to do things. It's your job to follow, to create your own rules and to follow that. Then you need to monitor the security performance of the server through regular review of audit trails. If you don't monitor that, you are blind. You don't know if you are attacked or not. You don't know if you have an intruder or if someone tries to enter your network or your server. Then you can also run anti-malicious software controls, I mean antivirus, anti-malware on the server. You also need to scan all hosted and uploaded content regularly because your server could be an FTP server. Even if your server doesn't have a problem, it will transport the files, and the files could be retrieved by your personnel. And what about if the antivirus doesn't work at this moment? Then maybe you can have a problem. It's really based on risk as well. So scan all the hosted and upload content regularly. Perform regular vulnerability assessment and security testing for the online sites and application to ensure that the security is adequately maintained. I never seen that in companies, maybe except it for the banking or blue chip companies, but for the rest, they scan maybe once a year or twice a year. For me, this is really not enough because you don't know if the one already exploit a vulnerability or not. So, well, it depends. You need to pay attention to that. And then regularly scan for compromises. I mean, I would say it's not only there we need to focus on trade-offs, but everywhere in business. It's also part of negotiation and risk analysis. Then we also look to the end user, and user should use supported operating system. Of course, I can still use my old or my legacy Windows 4.1, but maybe I use it on my own, not on a network at home, but my CISO, my Chief Information Security Officer, won't allow me to connect that on its network. I'm sure of that. I need also, as an end user, to use the latest supported software application. So I need to follow myself the Adobe patches. If I use Firefox, I need to also update the Firefox. If I use an antivirus, an anti-spyware, I will review the update regularly. And of course, I should use an antivirus and or an anti-spyware. Then for the surfing, I can also enable script blockers. It depends on the browser you use. If you are using Internet Explorer, maybe you have this kind of thing in the latest Internet Explorer version. I don't know. But if you use Firefox, you have this kind of script blockers or add-on or plugin, and it will block really the JavaScript. You can also use phishing filters in the emails they will finally give you a code on an email whether this is a suspicious one or not. And you can also use all the available web browser security features. We have a lot of that. Then finally, you can also enable what we call firewall and an host intrusion detection system. If someone tries to enter your computer at home, at least you know it and you can accept or deny the connection. And then also as an advice, enable automated updates. And this is not described here, but pay attention to who you trust on the internet, because I can send you as a server first a link in an email and then you click it. It's called clickjacking, and finally I tell you to download the latest revision of whatever, Adobe stuff and like that, and you think you download something correct, and rather you download a virus. So pay also attention to that. Well, social engineering attacks. Cyber criminals are increasingly resorting to psychological or social engineering tactics in order to succeed. As we are all e-connected, I mean mobile, tablets, social networks with a lot of information during the days, such attacks are also transcending technology beyond the PC system and traditional network connectivity. You could also have through Bluetooth, voice over IP. Please raise awareness on this within your company to communicate and follow the rules, describe it in a security policy towards end user. Well, this slide is introducing the relationship between, and it's a framework to share, to exchange information. The ISO 27032 standard introduces the concept of IPO and IRO, which the ISO advice should feature heavily in the framework developed for information sharing and incident handling. IPO stands for Information Providing Organization, while on the other side, REO is Information Receiving Organization, where an IPO, as you can see, can become an REO and vice versa. So it's such as a client server, finally. And then IPO, what's related to that? IPO, the sender of the cybersecurity related information. That's it. While REO is the recipient of the cybersecurity information. And this section of the standard provides guidelines for the implementation of a secure, reliable, effective, and efficient information sharing and cyber incident response framework. The framework includes the following areas. By areas, I mean policies at first. So policies should be defined to address the life cycle of the cyber security incident information from creation to transfer and destruction to ensure confidentiality, integrity, availability are maintained. Then we have the classification and categorization of information. IPO should determine the different categories of information they collect. You could have security events, security threats, security vulnerabilities, whether suspected or confirmed, perpetrators' profiles, and so forth. And for each category, it should be further broken down into 2 or more classifications based on the contents of the information involved, whether it could be sensitive or unrestricted. What can I say? Yes, if information contains personal data, privacy may also be applied. Then you can also have a look at ISO 39100, which define a framework to implement privacy. Then we have information minimization, and for each category and classification, IPO should exercise caution to minimize the information to be distributed. We also have limited audience, and again, in line with the minimization principle, a policy to limit the audience, which may be to a specific contact person, group, or organization, is necessary when sharing information containing private or confidential data. So you need, as a stakeholders, to be aware of that. Of course, if no policy do exist within your company, maybe you have a problem because you don't know where you are going to. The final one, is the coordination protocol. It's a high-level policy for coordinating the request and distribution, whether this is an IPO or an IRO, and it's coordinating the requests of distribution to be established. Then we have also methods and processes within this framework. So we need a classification and categorization of information. We need an NDA or NDAs, non-disclosure agreement. We need to define a code of practice, testing and drills, timing and scheduling of information sharing. For the first one, classification and categorization of information. Information to be shared will come from both open and closed sources. Open means internet, newspapers. This is public. And closed sources is not public available. Maybe this is your balance, and the balance is not to be disclosed before the next quarter. I don't know. It depends on your own policy. For the NDA, bear in mind we are in a context of information sharing. That said, we needed to ensure the adequate handling and protecting of sensitive personal confidential information shared amongst IPO and IRO. While responding to cybersecurity events, the pre-establishment of an NDA information amongst participants is really needed. In other words, if you need to hire an auditor, you will first being committed with him into an NDA agreement, but it's also normally foreseen in the contract. Or if you work with a forensic and this external guy will will have access to your data. Or please sign an NDA first. Then we have the code of practice, and the code of practice is establishing a good practice to ensure adequate sharing and handling of sensitive information between parties. Then you have the testing and drills. You need to ensure the effectiveness and reliability to achieve the desired level of efficiency, method, and processes. You could have a test. You could have a new incident management ticketing system. If you never test it, maybe shit happens. Anyway, shit happens. Finally, we have timing and scheduling of information sharing. You need also to define the requirements to share the information at which interval. Some organizations will need real-time information, while others could have a delay because they take their time to react to the incident, to the security incident prior disclosure. It also depends on the regulation and the sector where you are working. So again, as stakeholders, you need to be aware of your internal processes and regulation. That said, we have people in our organizations. So within the framework, we have contacts, alliances, awareness, and training. People in organization are the key determinants to the success of cybersecurity. I hope you believe me right now. So people refers to individual involved and executing the method and processes for information sharing and coordinating to make a positive difference to the outcome of cybersecurity events. While organizations refer to groups of people within a company up to entire company involved in such activities. For the contacts, you could have a list of contacts, and this list of contacts should be compiled by the IPO and RRO mutually exchange. It's the same in business continuity. Finally, if you are using ISO 22301, which stands for BCMS, Business Continuity Management System, you also need this kind of records in a crisis management meeting or in incident management. You need also to exchange that kind of information. Look obvious for me. So you can also have alliances to facilitate information sharing, establishing common and consistent practices governed by an agreed code of practice, and or even an NDA between you. Organizations and groups of individuals may form alliances based on their area of interest. Yes, again, awareness and training for the people in organization. People in organization should be made aware of emerging and new cybersecurity risk and trained so that they can develop the required skills and expertise to respond effectively to any situation related to cybersecurity. If you serve every day, we hear about Internet of Things. I can have a lot of devices connected at home with Bluetooth, and I purchase them to whatever. I purchase them, and then we have decided to connect it to our LAN or to our corporate LAN. But does anyone has assessed this kind of risk, this kind of vulnerabilities or the threats it could rely on these new emerging technology? I don't think so. So again, people at your organization need to be aware of that. And by meaning aware of that, I'm not telling you you need to know everything, but you need to think twice when you introduce a new device on your network. That's your role as an end user. Finally, for the technical controls, we speak about data standardization, data visualization, secure file sharing, and testing system. These controls may be used to improve efficiency, reduce human error, enhance security involved in the information sharing and coordination processes. For that standardization, these systems may be developed amongst coordination organizations to collect data on evolving cybersecurity events. It could be done real time or offline, meaning if you need to have analysis of the records. For data visualization, it's kind of representation of data without the help of technicians. I'm a manager, I want to see the big picture of that, and I don't have the time to wait for a technician to explain me, or because as I'm a manager, I don't understand what is explaining me. So I need a kind of data visualization. Securing file sharing. IPO and RRO should consider using suitable file sharing tools that can meet the security effectiveness, efficiency, and reliability needs. And then for the testing systems, of course, you need to test your tools, method, processes, scenarios, whatever. It should be considered. You can simulate with the perception of each organization because you are at least up to 2 organizations. You are either IPO or IRO, so you need to coordinate yourself with the other and simulate with the perception of each organization or the tests are doing. Then we will see the role of consumers and providers, but I already give you the intuition with the previous slides. The standards here introduces the difference between consumers and providers, while consumers is divided between individual and organizations. That's the consumers of the cyberspace, of the cyber self-security, or cybersecurity components, and then the role of providers. And to improve the state of cybersecurity, stakeholders in the cyberspace need to play an active role in their respective use and development of the internet. Roles can overlap with individual and organization networks, meaning intranet, extranet, websites, networks exposed to the internet. And a pitfall of that is because of this overlap, roles can be seen as insignificant for the concerned stakeholders, but significant to enhancing cybersecurity. So for the roles of consumers, let's start with individuals. Individuals, they may assume different roles in different contexts and applications. It may include general cyberspace application user, general user, online auction, and marketplace sites for interest buyers, and vice versa. You could be either a buyer, a seller, or a blogger, and other content contributor. You use Twitter, Wikipedia, YouTube, then you play different characters or roles, and you have different caps. You could be a member of an organization. As an example, I would say an individual acting as buyer or seller can unknowingly participate in criminal transactions of selling stolen goods or money, lottery activities. And you can switch from task to task during the day, from role to role during the days, during the weeks, depends. That said, let's have a look at the role of consumers for the organizations. While the organization should extend their corporate responsibilities to the cyberspace. How? By proactively ensuring that their practices and actions do not introduce further security risk into the cyberspace. Think about what I've said some slides earlier with the emerging Internet of Things. I introduce a new device on my network, and then I'm not prepared to that. Maybe there are vulnerabilities, I don't know. So, you need to be concerned, and by proactively ensuring that the practices and action do not introduce further security risk, ask the cybersecurity responsible, ask your CISO, ask your local security officer whether you can follow the rules or not, whether you can introduce this concept or not. Always ask. For the rest, we could have some proactive measures that includes implementing an ISMS. I mean, implementing an ISO 27001 could also reduce this kind of risk. You will have proper security monitoring and response. You need to monitor your risk. You need to monitor your assets, and you need to have a response on that. Because if you monitor it, no one is there to answer should the cybersecurity event happen. What will be the problem? So, incorporating security as part of the software development lifecycle, this is called for SDLC. You can also have a look at ISO 27000 or 34 for that. And regular security education of users in the organization through continuous technology update and keeping track of latest technology developments. Understanding also using proper channels in communicating with vendors and service providers on security issues discovered during usage. Then that was for the organization. Oh yes, I forgot the government. Maybe one of the most important for the moment is the terrorism problem. The role of stakeholders in cybersecurity for the government, normally the primary law enforcement agency and regulators may have the following important roles to play. Advise organization on their roles and responsibilities in the cyberspace, sharing information with other stakeholders on the latest trends and development in technology, sharing information with other stakeholders on the current prevalent security risk, be a conduct for receiving any information, whether closed or open, with regard to security risk to the cyberspace, be the primary coordinator for information dissemination and orchestrating any required resource, both of national level or corporate level. Finally, what's behind that? It's a cert. It's a national cert. In Belgium, we have cert.be, and in Luxembourg, we have cert.lu. These are also government agencies, and these are their responsibilities. Well, the role of providers right now. Service providers are also consumers organizations. They are thus expected to observe the same roles and responsibilities as consumers organizations. As service providers, they have additional responsibilities in maintaining or even enhancing cybersecurity. They need to provide safe and secure products and services. They need to provide safety and security guidance for end users. They need to provide security inputs to other other providers and to consumers about trends and observation of traffic in the network and service. That said, this is a picture that explains a little bit further the difference between the stakeholders, what kind of asset we have seen so far, and globally the measures against these assets. You see, we have introduced the concept of consumers, which is divided between individuals and organizations. And then we have providers, such as ISP, application server provider. Then with the individuals, it looks to personal assets. With organization, it's looked to organizational assets. And then for the providers, it could be either personal and organizational. And then for the personal assets, the best practice to follow is to be preventive, detective, and reactive. For the organizational assets, you need to have coordination and information sharing between entities. So, guidelines for stakeholders. ISO 31000 as a risk management framework. Principle and guidelines provides principle and generic guidelines on risk management. You can also follow the ISO 27005, which is rather for information security, and guidelines for consumers. This is a non-exhaustive list because I can write you 1,000 of slides on that. My dears, it means when you want to install a new mobile app or a new version of a patch, Adobe for instance, or a new version of an operating system, the latest version on Mac, You will need to read dozens of policy pages prior saying, yes, I have read it, but who's following that? Everyone clicks next 3 times and it's okay, but without really reading what's the content of this policy. As a guideline and as an advice, please take the time to read these privacies. You also need to manage your online identity. You will use different identifiers for different web applications. You will need to minimize the sharing of personal information to each website or application requesting such application. As guidelines for organizations and service providers, please manage your information security risk in the business. Address security requirements for hosting websites and other cyber application services. Provide security guidelines to consumers. Then you will have to address security requirements for hosting web and other cyber application services. Refer also to local regulation. It really depends. If you need to provide a website, think about the OWASP project with the top 10 vulnerabilities, and bear in mind that the top 2, meaning SQL injection and cross-site scripting, represent 80% of the vulnerabilities on the web application. Keep that in head. As a conclusion, where do we go so far? Well, I hope you are now convinced that cybersecurity is everyone's business. Impact could be really catastrophic. Cybersecurity risk involves a combination of multiple strategies, taking into account the various stakeholders. Either you are a consumer, employee, partner of an organization, a third party, a provider, whatever. The risk needs to be identified and addressed. But this is not limited to ISO 27000 or 42, finally. Risks are also deemed to performing business, whatever the business behind. You also need awareness and communication on how to report incidents. By detecting potential risk and security incidents. What's the procedure finally? Maybe you don't know how to report incident within your company. Keep an eye also on new emerging technology. By emerging technology, I mean Internet of Things. There are a lot of cool devices, really crafted and designed since 1 year or 2. You can also implement that with the smart cities, but no one is having a look at the risk on the vulnerabilities in the IoT. Not enough, to my mind. So that said, for just keeping with the conclusion, you need to have prevention, detection, and recovery. These are really the 3 phases of cybersecurity. You need to prevent, and then you will detect security event or security incident, and you need also to put in place a recovery process. So, as a conclusion, I can provide you with some facts. So the first figure, it's a real increase of cybersecurity attacks in 2015. So, and the year is not yet finished. So you see we have a growth of 176% of increasing cybersecurity attacks. And bear in mind that the first level of vulnerability is an organic one. It's you. We are humans. We made mistakes. We are the weakest link of the chain. And another interesting fact is that the average number of days that attackers were present on the victim networks before they were discovered is almost a year. And this is an average, and it was in 2014. So what about if you cannot prevent, if you cannot detect, and if you cannot react? Maybe you have intruders on your network and you don't know that. Maybe you disclose, I would say, on your behalf information, and they know your information, and they can quickly react if you raise a new product. They can counteract and raise the same or adapt their price. You don't know. Cybersecurity is also that. So I will leave you with the question and answer in a few minutes, because I forgot something, maybe the most important for the forthcoming weeks. What's next? With PECB, we have worked on training, and this training will be released in Nice, in France, on the second week of January. So I really invite you to get your passport to cybersecurity and join us in Nice to the PECB partner event on cybersecurity. For that, we have launched a campaign with PECB and our partner Alterian in Luxembourg. And with the consent of PECB, we started this campaign with our training mascot called Blue Hole. And the Blue Hole tweets about cybersecurity meets security professionals across Europe since 3 or 4 weeks, I think, and join also cybersecurity events. So my advice for the after party of this webinar, please feel free to follow Blue Hole on Twitter. And what's next with the Blue Hole? You see, this is this little hole has a lot to say, has a lot to travel. Was in Paris, was in San Sebastian, will be in Nice, of course, and believe me, it's only the beginning of the campaign. So thank you for your time. I will leave the end to Gezim and waiting for your question. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Fabrice, we have a few questions. The first one is there a relationship between ISO 27032 and NIST cybersecurity framework?
Okay. Well, I need to check, because I didn't check the NIST framework for this webinar, but I can answer lately. Which reference of NIST? Because there is a lot of references.
I mean, no, it's not mentioned anything here, but we can just proceed it after the presentation will end, and you can respond to this person by the email. Another question is, which could be the key factor that would push the stakeholder to apply ISO 27032?
The key factors, the key factors are it should be everyone is concerned by information security and by cybersecurity. But as cybersecurity is a complex environment, this is not really defined within your organization. So you see, if I use my own smartphone, I can be concerned, because so the key factors is to pay attention to the emerging technology, to following the rules, the policies within your organization, to collaborate with the risk assessment. But collaborating with risk assessment could be difficult for everyone within an organization, because they are not in the process. But rather, the organization should ask all the stakeholders within the scope of the cybersecurity to intervene in the cybersecurity. Another key factor is that procedure needs to be followed. This is the responsibility of everyone. If I've seen that someone just throwing examples, if I've seen that someone hasn't locked his screen, do I need to report it to the CISO and maybe this guy will be fired? It's not fair for me. Rather, I can say to this guy, okay, please you need to lock your screen. Could you lock your screen, because this is our global reputation of our company. Maybe I can go further. Maybe I will lose my bonus because we have a reputation breach or disclosure, and then everyone will lose. So this is really a team playing about cybersecurity. For the rest, everyone should be concerned, meaning detecting the incident or the potentiality of an event, and then they need to know how to react. If you don't explain people how to react should something happen, they won't do anything, and they need to be trained. And we need also, as organization, to show them that finally this is not really complicated. It's we need to adapt our mind to finally align the IT on the business. I would say I often used the example when I give training. If we use brakes on the cars, it's not for it's for security, of course, but it's not for stopping the business. If I have a brake on my car, I can go faster. I mean, without brakes, I won't ride 120 kilometers on the highway because I cannot brake, so I will ride with only 10 kilometers. So that's it. That's what I wanted to explain. We really need, as cybersecurity professional, we need to align the IT on the business processes of the company. And for me, this is my personal view. The IT services should evolve rather to a broker for the same company. They will have different services and they need to align them. But you cannot stop the business. If the business really needs a new IoT device, you won't go to the CIO and tell him, no, you won't do that because the risk analysis is too high. It's the responsibility of the top management to decide. That's it. And then IT for me should be also seen as an advisor and not someone who stops the business. Is it clear or?
Yes, I think it's clear enough. The last question is: do we need to provide a training or just awareness session to our personnel for implementation of ISO 27032?
No, for me, you don't. So far, you don't need to provide a training for the implementation of ISO 27032. Rather, you can combine what's describe it within the standards and integrate it with important part of your information security. If we speak about ISMS or if we speak about business continuity, you need to align the different scopes of the management systems. And maybe something already exists within your company. I've seen a lot of companies with charters, with information security policies. Then the gap could be really smaller. You don't need to follow a complete training for these users. Maybe with an awareness session with 1 hour within the company efficient. For instance, I do that for one of my customers in Belgium on business continuity, and part of my job is to provide also awareness, and I provide awareness on the policies. I give also trainings. By trainings can also be seen as awareness sessions. And awareness for me is to change the behavior of the people. Even it's really difficult to measure because everyone knows that if you ride in your car, you need to fasten your seatbelt. Everyone will answer, yes, I need to do that. How much people will do that? And that's the difference between following a training and having an awareness and a good sense of quality with the awareness. So it depends. These are, for me, these are just words. Trainings or awareness, it could be the same. And then, finally, to conclude, I will say align on the existing policy. align of the existing policy within the company and craft and design your awareness on that. And maybe the gap is really smaller. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Fabrice, once again for this highly informative presentation. I believe the attendees had the chance to learn something new today, and I suggest you to take time and see our future webinar that we will be hosting. Next Wednesday, we will host a webinar topic which is called ISO 27001 in the world today and why you should consider it. Thank you once again for being part of this webinar.